then every step forward will always be a step closer to home.
So step on up to the place. Need to face what can spread on into the light of us. Step on up to the place. 'Cause this ain't no game. It's time to make history.
This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Naruto anime, the 23rd anniversary of the Naruto manga, as well as today, at the time of this video's recording, is Naruto Uzumaki's birthday. So I decided to myself, I want to talk about this series that has been kind of a major staple of my childhood, and probably one of the major biggest manga series I ever followed at the time. Because, well, as I would say, sure, there was a time I liked One Piece, but I still respect it. I still like Dragon Ball. It's a flawed series, but I still enjoy it. And I only have small memories of Yu Yu Hakusho, but never I fully remember much of it outside of maybe a few minor things. So this video is going to be just a discussion of my memories of this series and where I've really come from as a Naruto fan, and how my memories of the show, my experiences, and how I always feel different, because I think the biggest change I would always say about myself, I look myself different from most Naruto fans or at least how people look at the Naruto community, is that I do my best to not interact in a way that would make me come off like I don't see the flaws of the series, I don't see what's wrong with the series, etc. and etc. So I guess I'll kind of start off is how I got introduced to Naruto. Well, I think a lot of people's first introduction to the series would have to be when it was on Cartoon Network. Now, Cartoon Network did show its anime block sometime before, it was shown on Toonami, obviously. It actually was on. It was just really on their regular weekday lineup. So, you wouldn't know that Naruto was edited for TV, at least the broadcast version of it, because you wouldn't know, you'd be surprised of how they were able to still get away with Naruto Sexy Jutsu. But I remember the show. I would say this. Now, one thing about Naruto that I think a lot of people really should also give a lot of credence to, that this was one of the biggest shows to come out in the new era of voice of dubs. This was one of the shows that didn't have name changes or loss of music, loss of openings, and I think this is still to this day one of Studio Opposite's best shows next to Bleach and Inuyasha. And you can really show that this is one of their best shows, to the point that that this is always trying to have new sets out there, And I remember the promos for it, the story, this whole idea of this young boy who has this demon inside him that he's shunned by his village and sees a monster, and he's a ninja who goes to his academy and goes on missions, and his life changed from there. And I would say that it's still crazy to think that watching Naruto back then is kind of the first few episodes. I think most people can remember, but I think they're more remembered for small things. I think people only remember most of the beginning training arc for like the infamous Naruto Sasuke kiss, which when we saw it in the US, we never see the kiss. You didn't know the kiss existed until you saw a little scream where you see the kiss. And to be fair, I will get to that and I'll talk about other things. And I think a lot of like small things like, oh, you meet Konohamaru, like you wouldn't think Konohamaru would become such a major character back then, because you would just saw him just as a little kid who saw Naruto as his rival. You would never think that not only he grows up to be a Jonin, but also becomes Boruto's sensei. But I think like the one episode, I think all of the getting training arc, which I'm using kind of the name of it based on the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm game. I think like a lot of things that people can say they remember of that arc would mostly be things like, oh, the Kakashi's bell test, or Naruto unfortunately had bad milk and went to the bathroom. Or I think something a lot of people probably don't talk about, where Sakura did put her foot in her mouth and forgets the fact she's talking to someone who is also an orphan. But that's beside the point. But I would say the arc is not like as memorable. There's some memorable stuff of this arc, like the introduction, you meet each the characters, you get a good idea of the dynamic that they all kind of look at Naruto as this troublemaker, this prankster. He caused a lot of trouble. But then, you know, you look at Naruto, and especially now, you realize he just kind of does it for, he just wasn't really doing it to just cause trouble. It kind of felt like he just did it for try to get attention. He wanted people to know it was him. He wanted people to, he just wanted to create attention in people. But no one did give him attention because they just saw him as a monster. The only few people who saw him as a good person was Ruka Sensei, who Naruto did save and was able to finally master the clone jutsu that he needed to graduate. By also learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu, that secret scroll, which is actually an S rank jutsu that Naruto mastered, and has become like one of his most staple abilities in the series today. But I would say that, you know, you meet Sasuke and Sakura, and I think a lot of times you can say that a lot about Sakura gets overblown, but I will go into more detail as I go through this little discussion look back. But I will say this, I do feel like Sakura gets overhated because of, you know, she hits Naruto, she fawns over Sasuke, she yells at him, she gets mad at people, she doesn't have like, oh, she doesn't have a lot of victories or like notable moments in the series compared to maybe others in the series. And I think that's what a lot of people will say about Sakura is, well, she's useless. And that's kind of something you hear a lot from people is saying, Sakura's useless, everything. Sakura's a terrible character, blah blah blah. And that's something that's always talked of. But I'll try to look back for the whole series. The village hidden away, the bridge builder arc is another arc I feel like most people remember. But I would always argue I don't think that it's only remembered for like Haku, Zapsa, some like good moments in that arc, including like you see the first introduction to Naruto's tailed forms, where he starts to be cloaked with the tailed beast's chakra. But I would say it's an arc that I don't want to say anyone remembers very well, but it's only remembered for things like minor stuff. Like, it's not as like a memorable arc in like the sense of like the tuning exam or the retrieval of Tsunade arc or the Sasuke retrieval arc. or mean Itachi. Like, it's not an arc I would say people will always say, oh, this is the best moment of Naruto. But I guess that's kind of where I would understand where some people would kind of, it's not an arc I would always think about. Heck, to the point that even Storm skips the Land of the Waves arc in basically their retelling of Naruto opening the storm. Probably to just keep the areas very minor, like not as open or as major as like you say Storm 2's areas or Storm 3's areas or Storm 4's areas. Even Storm 4 having several areas exclusive for the Boruto story. But I think a lot of people could say the shooting exam is kind of like the biggest factor of Naruto, is like the moment everyone remembers. But outside of the Sasuke retrieval arc, we got to see obviously tournaments. Like tournaments have always been a staple of anime, and it's always about who will win the tournament, who is going to come out on top. I think the biggest thing about the shooting exam arc, it was not about the tournament, but like the development that we see in other characters. I think the best way I can sum up Naruto is that he has a strange ability, a strange gift of changing others, even when he himself was shunned by others and he himself couldn't change. He wanted people to accept him, and yet he played a big role in people, changing. His interactions with Kiba, with Lee, and Neji, and with Gaara. But mostly Gaara and Neji, because these are two characters who had like a very major arc in this whole entire season of this. And we also met Jiraiya. We got to see our first summoning jutsu, how they work. We got to see some very good moments. We got to deal with a lot of stuff that's outside our main three. We find out that there's a lot of family issues. We learned a lot more about these other villages. We also learned that there are other tailed beasts, and there's 7 of them, of course. We got to meet one of them, being the one-tailed beast, whose name I just keep forgetting. Trust me, you'd be surprised how I am so behind on watching part 2. I can barely remember all of part 2 because I never finished all of it. So I'm only going off what I do know of it. But I think that arc is also like, when the Shoto Cartoon Network, probably I think everyone can always say the first major opening we ever got in Naruto in the initial Tanami was Go, which I always thought was Fighting Dreamers was the name of the song growing up, but now it's actually just Go. Makes so much sense. And I remember that opening. I remember Jiraiya. I think is both a good mix up the pervy character, but the wise sensei, and he has a good balance of him, what I think makes him a memorable character. And of course, we can't not talk about this arc without the whole situation with the Dirt. The Dirt Hokage always had played a very a small role in the Summary arc, but he's always someone who I would always say also looked out for Naruto. He's probably one of those who got him a place to stay, not to just be out in the streets. They've obviously made sure that obviously he is taken care of enough that he could go into the academy, even without parents. And this episode, Dirt always knew that who Naruto's parents were. I think only a few people probably knew at the time, but they kept it secret from even him. But a lot of the adults, basically, instead of treating Naruto as the hero, they treat him as a monster. And the Dirt's death is still a very iconic moment. I always remember the episode Dirt Forever, the Dirt Hokage Forever, remember the Dirt, or something like that. And that episode is always going to be remembered for just that very sad moment before the Tsunade people arc. And me and Tsunade, you got your, the heart, it's hard. I think I remember I remember I think I was looking her up back day when Wiki. Yeah, remember not Wiki. It's crazy to think that she's in her 50s, but it's because of her, her training, and obviously with her ability, she's able to keep her youthful appearance. And her whole arc and dealing with death and what it means to be, and whole thing of having a dream to be Hokage, and Naruto also inspired her to face her demons, and she decided to finally take the spot of becoming Hokage, including giving Naruto the necklace that now he currently wears that he gives to Boruto. I think people forget that. But I think the one thing of part 1 everyone remembers is obviously the Sasuke retrieval arc. That's the arc everyone remembers. You go to Itachi, you finally meet him, and he is shown to be pretty strong, and that Sasuke could never beat him. And this really kind of driven Sasuke, who, up this point, even though Naruto and Sakura are his teammates, these are Ikashi, the number of family, his only thought, his only feelings are to defeat his brother. So he, of course, abandons his village. The whole Naruto, Kiba, Choji, Shikamaru, and Lee all go chasing after him. Basically, all got himself beaten almost to near death. And this was like a major, moment for Shikamaru to take the lead as a Chunin. And for him, this was like he put his friends in danger. But Naruto, he had to take a lot of this whole thing on himself. He wanted to chase Sasuke. We had probably one of the most iconic fights of the anime is Naruto versus Sasuke. And I think this scene is where we got the infamous clash between them, between the curse mark Chidori versus the Nine-Tailed Fox did Rasengan, which led to one of the most infamous moments in the series, and of course it leads to Naruto's departure from the Hidden Leaf and goes on his training for 2.5 years, leading to part 2. Part 2 has a very interesting story, and I'll keep part 2 stuff short because I would tell you that I never finished part 2, but I was keeping up with a lot of that time. So, back when part 2 was coming out, Naruto left Cartoon Network, and it didn't have a place to go, actually. So, and then when people found out it was going to go to Disney XD, there was a lot of this uproar, the casting will get recast, or the people from Disney Channel. It was so silly. Kind of sound like what was going on now. That's it. But Naruto, it of course returned. It returned with everybody, and there were of course 2 versions of Naruto. The broadcast version, I don't think the broadcast version, as well as the uncut version, which I think they also shown, and part 2. I think part 2 will always have some of the best openings of part 1. Heroes Come Back, Hotaru no Hikari, Silhouette, so many great openings and endings. And trust me, I think everyone remembers that one of the craziest openings is Baskoi. Oh my god, that is such a silly opening, but I think that is the charm of Naruto, was the craziness that the series could give us, So, I will remember some things I remember things like the fight against a lot of the anime. I do remember watching most of it, but never all of it, but I just see clips. But I would say YouTube back then for Naruto was so crazy. You had a lot of the AMV, you have a lot of bridge series, you had a lot of there was one that Masako X was part of, and there was a lot of parody. There was already a decent era of cosplay, and part 2 was obviously going on at around that time. The manga, and it was just, when the anime would come out. But I would always say that Naruto is a flawed series, even to its ending. I understand that there were some people who didn't like that Naruto ended up with Hinata, and some people wanted with Sakura. I understand that some people don't feel like relationships were well written enough. I understand that there was a big that people did not. Some people, including one of my friends, wish that Sasuke was died. But I will always say that the series is still flawed, and I feel like hating the series because of its popularity, hating the series because of the filler, or hating the series because there's, and of course, you do have your weirdos, and I think some of the weirdos do kind of lead to the very name that should not be said. I would never say ever. But I think the one thing that we can always say that people just dislike the show, but at the same time they want to just denounce its legacy. I feel like a lot of people do show that they take their anger out on a fictional character. Sometimes Sakura, sometimes any popular character like Hinata, sometimes Naruto. I think sometimes people do take a lot of Naruto too seriously. Things like the biggest reason why I believe it was such a thing Naruto said back in that was the dub, because there was never really a way to translate Dachibayo back in the day. So that's why you wouldn't know about until you meet Naruto's mother, Kushina. And I think a lot of people do kind of hate Sakura because of her crush on Sasuke, and she never really never evolved as far from just being red. But I would never call her relationship with Naruto to be abusive. It's always supposed to be played. The whole thing was always supposed to be played for laughs. And I think a lot of time you can tell people did take a lot of it seriously, and it shows. And now more recently, it does feel like, because there's not a lot of Naruto in Boruto, it started the meme Boruto's dad, which, if you want my honest opinion as someone who's 31 and has watched this series since he was in elementary school, middle school, Boruto's dad is a very dumb joke. I think it's a very stale joke, and I think the joke has kind of run its course. And I don't really find it funny, really, and honestly, if you find it funny, that's okay, but I don't really find it funny at all. But I think it does say that I didn't really, even when there was all that whole Sakura hate, I did join into it. I just kind of joined in with it because it's funny. I didn't realize people actually did live their time hating a fictional character, and there was something you can always say was an issue back in the day. Is that I think people did take their hates for fictional characters too seriously, and people took their hate for fictional characters too seriously. And I think after I met the voice actors for Sakura, I kind of had an epiphany and realized how silly it is to hate fictional characters. I realized it's silly to hate Naruto, to hate Sasuke. I understand his character is annoying a lot of people, and think he thinks he's an archetype. To the point people even think Riki from Kingdom Hearts plays Sasuke. But I don't think he's a bad character. I feel like there's a lot of depth to his character. I think that people don't pay a lot of attention, because they just focus on the quote-unquote edginess of him, but don't focus on that he was a broken character that basically never had a chance to really change. Then you have Naruto. Yeah, he can be annoying, but sometimes people forget that his cockiness, he kind of just wants people to accept him, and sometimes he just acts up, but he's just kind of a kid. I think sometimes people forget that at the end of the day, they're just kids, and sometimes you have to look past your distaste for a character and remember that they're just fictional children. Sometimes fictional animals in some series. But I think that the biggest reason I kind of grew out of the hate for Sakura in 2017, because I felt like it was pointless. Hating Sakura wasn't fun, and I don't think hating fictional characters. I think getting mad about Kishimoto not developing the relationships, and I think hating Naruto, getting mad about Naruto because of filler, it really does show people will never move on, and shame. I think that a lot of shipping does get a little annoying, especially some of the yaoi which people obsess over. It does get to the point where it gets we worried that there's some uncomfortable underage ones that people will ship. You realize that there is a lot of very thirsty fangirls, and this is why people hate on the fans of Naruto. I think a lot of times people do think that because you're a fan of Naruto, you don't see the criticisms with Kishimoto. I don't think Kishimoto is blind from criticism. I think that he has admitted he's not good at writing romance. But I think that there's no one can write good at writing romance. At the same time, people hating the fact that Sakura and Hinata, while being jonin, give up the life of a ninja to have a normal, be just mothers. Which people have to accept that not every female character is going to live the life of being a badass. Sometimes you have to you gotta put away the weapon, you gotta put away the sword, you gotta put away everything to finally get the peace you want, the happiness you want. And I think that's what I think a lot of people miss, and I think a lot of people don't understand it. That's why I'm not in the same boat of complaining about Videl in Dragon Ball, and I'm not in the same boat of complaining about other quote-unquote badass female characters turning mothers. Because I feel like there is more to a character than being a badass, and I think it's sad that people seem to understand that. But I digress on that, because Naruto is a series that really played up with something that was part of my childhood. I loved watching the show. I loved finally getting to play the games. This is why that I was so happy to finally play the Storm series. The first Storm, I got the chance to play both 1 and 2, which I actually found. I actually got to buy back in the PS3 like years ago. I'm glad I got Storm 3 and 4 thanks to the Legacy Collection on PS3, and it's also on the Switch. I'm happy that I can probably meet people who love this show and talk to people about it. And I would say that I would say this to anyone is that not all Naruto fans are toxic. Like any fandom, you have to temper your expectations to meet people IRL. And that's how I look at it. And if you don't like Naruto, that's fine. If you don't like the series, that's okay. You don't have to watch it. Like any series, you can just leave it be. But sometimes you have to just remember that Sasuke is not an archetype, as much as people kind of want to believe so. So I guess my final thoughts in this discussion. I was in middle school, or getting to middle school when Naruto aired. Now I'm 31. I'm in college, kind of, and I'm watching the series more and more. So for me, Roxas 99, I'll see you next time for any type of videos I might do. Take care and bye.